Hi there. What has the Satanic Gnosis and Christian Satanism got to do with Gnosticism in general? Modern Gnosticism. It's a kind of type of Gnosticism. So first of all, the Satanic Gnosis is an appreciation, or even I suppose a worship, certainly a valuing of the operation of the adversarial algorithm, or the adversarial spirit, if you want to put it in poetic terms, that is the basis of everything that happens in the universe. So basically, you have pairs of opposites, of opposite forces, situations, human people, and you have you have an adversarial spirit between them. So they're fighting each other, and from this fight, from this adversarial relationship between two situations or atoms or molecules or whatever, you have a third positive outcome. So the best example of this is that most of the muscles in the body, in fact all the muscles in your body are arranged in pairs of opposites, and they work. The pairs of muscles work against each other to I don't know to uh, to make your muscles make you move. So there's locomotion, and also for your hairs to stand up on end, for example, when you're cold. This is all the operation of pairs of muscles working in opposition to each other. So this is one tiny example of what goes on all over the universe. Is that there's pairs of opposites working to create a positive outcome or an evolutionary outcome or some kind of growth outcome or something like that. So strife, as one might call it in terms of the tarot, is actually not seen as a negative but as a positive. And not only that, but strife itself, the adversarial algorithm, the adversarial spirit, the action of adversarial forces in the universe is seen as a manifestation of strength. And so strength is again a positive, good thing, whereas weakness, apathy, loss of growth, petrification, putrefaction is seen as evil. So there's that duality between strength and weakness on the one hand, and an appreciation of the action of the adversarial algorithm in the universe, which is either impersonal or seen even as a personal sort of deity called Satan. So that's the Satanic Gnosis in a nutshell. And it's gnosis because it's something which you know through observation, through science, empiricism, but mostly just through observation. You just observe that it seems that two forces at loggerheads with each other create a positive outcome. For example, in Hindu myth, the demons and the good spirits together they churn the milk ocean to create existence as we know it. Because they're churning the butter. They're churning the milk in order to make the butter. But the point is that the forces arrayed against each other, the demons and the gods, they are working against each other, but also with each other to create positive existence itself. You see, so that's Satanic Gnosis in a nutshell. But what about Christian Satanism? Well, that's just the belief, really, that and it follows a sort of a Marcion paradigm, in the sense that Jesus is the adversarial force against Yahweh, and yet the tension between the Old and the New Testament, the tension that exists between Yahweh on one side and Jesus Christ on the other, creates the movement of the narrative from Alpha to Omega. That's certainly one thing. But then many Christian Satanists just simply believe that that Jesus is Satan, really, and Jesus is the adversary of the God of the Old Testament. So he replaces law, he replaces good works by faith, which is a sort of Pauline view of Christianity. So that really Jesus is the revolutionary force. He is, the force that turns over the tables and the money changers' tables in the temple. He's even a force that curses the fig tree, and he has a higher purpose in opposing the God of the Old Testament. So, but whereas Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, of course, tries to integrate the God of the Old Testament, which it sees as the same God as the God of the New Testament, by the way, which certainly the sort of Marcion view of Marcion Gnosticism definitely doesn't. It says and believes that there are literally two gods, the God of the Jews on one hand and the God of the Gentiles on the other, which of course is heresy, obviously. And also a little bit, it's only a bit anti-Semitic, or it could lead to anti-Semitism on one hand, and it's a bit sort of cliquey on the other, really. I was trying to look for the word really that describes two tribes sort of going against each other. But anyway, the point is that Satan is the sort of adversarial force, as it were, and Jesus is part of this adversarial revolutionary force. The 23rd hexagram, for example, talks about uproot, overthrow. So in magical terms, you got I, H, V, H, and so this IH would be the conservative God of law, God of the Old Testament, tribal, judgmental, conditional love, and then this would be the adversary, which would be like this would be the adversarial force, what might be called the Jesus force, or the actual God, Jesus, who is the adversary of this, who is faith and unconditional love and all that kind of stuff. So he stands in opposition to the God of the Old Testament, and the New Testament stands, that doesn't stand altogether either, because Marcion, of course, edited most of the New Testament out of existence and only had the Pauline epistles on one hand, and I think the Gospel of Luke on the other, and that was heavily edited as well. So Jesus comes down to Galilee as a sort of stranger god who comes from nowhere, a bit like sort of Adonis, I suppose. But the thing about it is that Christian Satanists identify Satan and Christian. Satan and Jesus are one and the same thing, the same adversarial force, you see. So even though Jesus rebukes Satan on two occasions, one very, very strongly, because he regards Satan as being the tempter that would tempt him to become the king of the Jews and use his powers to overthrow the Romans in a military sense. So that's when he says, "Get behind me, Satan." But also that Satan is a tempter in the wilderness. But in many ways, you see that you could say that Satan and Jesus again are two binary powers. And without Satan being part of the narrative, you wouldn't have Jesus overcoming him in the narrative, you see. So it's like you need two sides, protagonist and antagonist, in order to create narrative, in order to move the narrative along. So you need the Jedi and the Sith. Otherwise, you don't have Star Wars, basically, to put it crudely and in popular culture terms. Basically, I suppose that the Satanic Gnosis and the idea of Christian Satanism is an extension or a development or an interpretation of Gnosticism in its classical sense. Definitely a form of modern Gnosticism, I would say. But it has a big problem because the word Satan and Satanism is of course associated with the libertine, the psychopath, and the amoral or the immoral even, and or even the conspiratorial in the terms of the New World Order. So it's something that you have to be very careful, or you don't sort of talk about in too much of a glowing terms, because there is a very a vicious side to Satanism as well, as it is interpreted by some people, and that's the side which most people associate, I suppose, with Satanism, is its vicious, violent, destructive, criminal side. And people say that if you don't talk about that, you're whitewashing and you're denying and you're trying to deceive people into thinking that Satanism is a jolly good chap sort of thing, when in fact he's not at all. He's not like Raffles. He's not like a sort of anti-hero hero kind of binary. He is just all bad. He is all horrible, like Nero Caesar. So the beast, in other words, he is exploitative, manipulative, and predatory. After all, there isn't anything redeemable about Satan. So trying to put him on the same page, or equate him, make him equivalent to Christ, it seems absolutely insane, really, to many people, and to many Gnostics as well. Having said that, so it's not something that basically you can talk about in polite company, really. Or even talk about at all, really. And I think that perhaps the idea of the adversarial spirit in the universe is really just all part of the demiurge anyway. I mean, all you're doing really is describing the way the demiurge works. And if we decided to transcend the demiurge and go into non-duality, then basically, the demiurge and the adversarial spirit, has no value. That's the main thing. I mean, what value could you actually place on any of this if the objective is to transcend duality, transcend the adversarial spirit, transcend the demiurge and his worlds, because the real value, the reality, the underlying reality, is the good God, the non-dualistic God, the God of the supernal triad in Kabbalistic terms, you see. But I'm not here to judge anybody for their belief systems, really. As just you could basically just accuse Christian Satanism of not going far enough. Really, it's not Gnostic enough, and yet obviously it's too Gnostic for for Orthodox Christianity to take any notice of or take seriously, or even not to regard with some hostility. And and I don't think really there are any Christian Satanists, really. There are people that are playing with this paradigm, or thinking about it as a thought experiment, but I don't think there are actually churches or groups of Christian Satanists running around the world, being what they are and sort of proselytizing. It really is, well, on my part, it certainly is just an experiment with thought and terms, and values and beliefs and equivalence between certain beliefs. But really, in strict Gnostic terms, I don't think the Satanic Gnosis really has much of a place, to be perfectly frank with you.